There is a plant with unassuming red stems right now, very likely crawling through the cracks in your driveway, that contains more omega-3 fatty acids than salmon. Not per pound, but per leaf. It has been a staple food for human beings for at least 4,000 years. It survived the fall of empires. And in the year 2022, scientists at Yale University discovered it does something that was previously thought to be a biological impossibility. Something that makes it a kind of superplant. And yet, the modern herbicide industry, a $40 billion global enterprise, spends a significant portion of its resources making sure you never learn its name and providing you with the chemical weapons to destroy it on sight. This is the story of the world's most nutritious plant and why it is classified as a common weed. During my years as a botanist, I have seen this pattern repeat itself over and over again. A plant of immense value, a source of incredible nutrition and resilience, is pushed to the margins, forgotten, and even demonized. Not because it failed us, but because it did not fit into a system designed for profit and control. Today, I want to share with you a plant that is likely within a few feet of you right now, a plant that holds the key to understanding not just our past, but our future in a world of increasing drought and uncertainty. The story begins in the ancient world. In northern Greece, archaeologists were excavating a site when they uncovered a clay vessel. Inside, preserved for 3,000 years, were thousands of tiny black seeds, each one barely a millimeter across. They were the seeds of the very same plant that was growing wild between the stones, just outside the dig site. The seeds dated back to 1050 BC. This was not a wild plant that people foraged occasionally. This was a cultivated crop. By the 7th century before Christ, these same seeds appear in the ruins of the Heraion of Samos, one of the most important sanctuaries in all of ancient Greece. By the 4th century BC, the great philosopher Theophrastus, a student of Aristotle, was writing detailed instructions for farmers, telling them to sow this plant in April alongside their most essential crops. This was not a weed. This was food. This was medicine. This was a cornerstone of their civilization. The Roman Empire, with its logistical genius, cultivated this plant across 3 continents. The Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder wrote about it in his famous work, Natural History, nearly 2,000 years ago. It was a common vegetable, a reliable source of nutrition for both citizens and soldiers. Within the Roman Empire, it was used to treat headaches, inflammation, bladder disorders, dysentery, and hemorrhoids. The physicians of that era understood something about this plant that our modern medicine has largely forgotten. But the story gets even more mysterious. For a long time, botanists believed that European settlers brought this plant to the Americas after 1492. When it was officially documented in Massachusetts in 1672, it was assumed to be an import. But then archaeology revealed a startling truth. The plant was already here. Seeds found in a cave in Kentucky were dated to 800 BC. Seeds found in Ontario, Canada, were dated to 1350 AD. For thousands of years, Native American communities had been cultivating this exact same plant as part of the Eastern agricultural complex, alongside sunflowers and squash. Think about that for a moment. 2 separate branches of humanity, separated by a vast ocean, with no contact whatsoever, both looked at the vast kingdom of plants and independently decided that this specific one was essential. They both chose to cultivate it, to rely on it, to make it a part of their food system. What did they know that we have so completely forgotten? They knew what was inside. In the 1960s, a physiologist from the University of Minnesota named Ansel Keys launched one of the most ambitious public health studies in history, the 7 Countries Study. He wanted to understand why some populations were plagued by heart disease, while others seemed almost immune. He tracked nearly 13,000 men across 7 different countries for decades. The results, when they came, shattered the nutritional dogma of the time. The men from the island of Crete, in Greece, had one of the lowest rates of heart disease in the world. This was confusing, because their diet was incredibly high in fat, over 35% of their total calories. According to the theories of the day, they should have been dying of heart attacks in droves. For 20 years, the scientific community credited their good health to olive oil and the magic of the so-called Mediterranean diet. But there was another hidden factor. In the 1980s, a new team of scientists went back to the frozen blood samples from that original study. They were led by Dr. Artemis Simopoulos, a physician and nutritionist. They were not looking for cholesterol. They were looking for omega-3 fatty acids. What they found was astonishing. The men from Crete had 3 times the level of omega-3s in their blood compared to the other participants. But they were not eating 3 times more fish. So, where was it coming from? It was coming from a weed, a plant the Cretans called glystrida. They ate it almost every single day. They put it in salads. They stewed it with tomatoes. They sautéed it with olive oil and garlic. They fed it to their chickens and their goats. The people ate the plants, and they ate the animals that ate the plants. The entire island's food system was running on a plant that grew for free in every field and every garden. That plant was purslane. Dr. Simopoulos took purslane back to her lab for analysis, and the numbers that came back seemed impossible. She found that 100 grams of fresh purslane leaves, about 1 serving, contained between 300 and 400 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA. That is the essential plant-based omega-3 fatty acid our bodies need, but cannot make on their own. To put that in perspective, it is 5 to 7 times more omega-3 than spinach. It is 15 times more than iceberg lettuce. In fact, her research confirmed that purslane is the richest vegetable source of omega-3 fatty acids ever measured. But the story gets even stranger. Land plants are not supposed to be able to make EPA, one of the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids you typically only get from marine sources like salmon and algae. Yet, when Dr. Simopoulos analyzed purslane, she found traces of EPA. Not a lot, just about 1/100th of a milligram per gram, but it was there. A biological impossibility, present in a common weed. When she published her findings in 1992, other scientists were skeptical, assuming the samples must have been contaminated. They were not. And the nutritional powerhouse did not stop there. Purslane contains 7 times more vitamin E, a powerful antioxidant, than spinach. It has 6 times more beta-carotene, the precursor to vitamin A, than carrots. It is loaded with glutathione, often called the body's master antioxidant. It is packed with melatonin, the hormone that regulates sleep. It is an excellent source of minerals like potassium, at 494 milligrams per 100 grams, along with magnesium, calcium, and iron. This is not just a plant. It is a nutritional treasure chest, a pharmacy growing wild in your backyard. The Lion Diet Heart Study, a landmark clinical trial, later tested whether this Cretan-style diet could actually save lives. They took over 600 heart attack survivors and split them into 2 groups. One group received the standard low-fat dietary advice of the time. The other was put on a Mediterranean diet rich in omega-3, fatty acids from sources like purslane and walnuts. After 5 years, the results were so dramatic that the study had to be stopped early. It had become unethical to keep the control group on the standard diet. The group eating the purslane-style diet had 70% fewer deaths. Not just fewer heart attacks, but a 70% reduction in death from all causes. So, I ask you, why is this plant not in every grocery store? Why are we not taught to cherish it? Why instead are we taught to poison it? This brings us to the suppression story. The reason you do not know about purslane is the same reason so many other valuable plants have been erased. It cannot be easily controlled. The global herbicide market is a machine that generates over $40 billion in revenue every year. Companies like Bayer, Syngenta, and Corteva have built empires selling chemicals designed to create uniformity in our fields and lawns. And purslane is the enemy of uniformity. It is often listed as a primary target for their products. Herbicides containing chemicals like 2,4-D, a component of the Agent Orange used in the Vietnam War, are marketed directly to homeowners and farmers for the specific purpose of eradicating purslane. Homeowners associations write rules prohibiting it. Agricultural extension offices publish detailed guides on how to kill it. The entire infrastructure of modern horticulture and industrial agriculture treats this plant as an enemy to be destroyed. It is not because purslane is harmful. It does not damage ecosystems. It does not choke out native plants. It is targeted because it represents a threat to a business model. You cannot patent purslane. You cannot genetically modify its seed coat to make it sterile, forcing farmers to buy new seed from you every year. It has been reproducing freely for thousands of years, and it will continue to do so no matter what anyone does. Think about the other sources of omega-3 fatty acids. Wild fish. Populations are collapsing under the pressure of overfishing. Farmed salmon requires massive industrial infrastructure and is often plagued by disease and pollution. Fish oil supplements are a multi-billion-dollar industry, costing $20 a bottle. Flax seeds are a good source, but the oil is notoriously unstable and goes rancid quickly. And then there is purslane. It grows for free in almost every climate zone where human beings live. It produces more omega-3 fatty acids per acre than any cultivated crop, and it asks for nothing in return but sunlight and the occasional rain. The plant that could revolutionize how humanity gets this essential nutrient is classified as the world's most common weed. But the most incredible part of this story was only revealed in 2022. For years, scientists were fascinated by purslane's sheer toughness. It thrives in scorching heat and extreme drought, conditions that would kill most of our food crops in days. A team of researchers at Yale University, led by Professor Erica Edwards, decided to find out why. They published their findings in the journal Science Advances on August 5th, 2022, and it completely rewrote a chapter of plant biology. To understand what they found, you need to know a little about photosynthesis. Most plants use a process called C3 photosynthesis. It works well, but it is not very efficient in hot, dry conditions. To solve this, some plants, like corn and sugarcane, evolved a more efficient system called C4 photosynthesis. It allows them to stay productive in high temperatures, but they still need a lot of water. Then there are desert plants, like cacti and agave. They evolved a third system called KM photosynthesis. They are masters of water conservation. They only open the pores on their leaves at night to take in carbon dioxide when it is cool and humid, and then they seal them up tight during the day to prevent water loss. This allows them to survive in the desert, but it comes at a cost. They grow incredibly slowly. Scientists knew that purslane was special because it could perform both C4 and CAM photosynthesis. But the universal assumption was that these two systems were kept separate, operating in different cells within the leaf. What the Yale team discovered was that this was wrong. Using advanced techniques to map gene expression, they found that C4 and CAM were not separate at all. They were fully integrated, operating together in the very same cells at the very same time. The byproducts of the water-saving CAM pathway were being fed directly into the machinery of the fast-growing C4 pathway. Professor Edwards called it a superplant. She said it was a very rare combination of traits. It had found a way to combine the best of both worlds, the high productivity of C4 and the incredible drought resistance of cam. No other plant on Earth is known to do this. It is a biological masterpiece, an evolutionary innovation that we are only just beginning to understand. The very plant we spend billions to eradicate holds a genetic blueprint that could be essential for engineering crops, like corn and wheat, to survive the prolonged droughts that are becoming more and more common in our changing climate. So, what do we do with this knowledge? The answer is simple. We stop fighting it, and we start eating it. The first step is to learn how to identify it correctly. Purslane has very distinct features. The stems are thick, smooth, and almost always have a reddish tint. They grow flat along the ground, spreading out from a central taproot. The leaves are the biggest giveaway. They are succulent, meaning they are thick and fleshy, like a cactus leaf. They are paddle-shaped or spoon-shaped and grow in clusters along the stem. When you break a stem, it is juicy and almost translucent inside. The flowers are very small, with 5 tiny yellow petals, and they usually only open for a few hours in the morning on hot, sunny days. The most important thing to remember is that the stems are always smooth. There is a plant called hairy-stemmed spurge that sometimes gets confused with purslane, but as its name suggests, its stems are hairy. Purslane is always smooth. Never eat a plant you are not 100% certain you have correctly identified. Once you have found it, stop poisoning it. If it is growing in your garden, let it be. If it is coming up between the stones of your patio, consider it a gift from nature. Harvest it when it is young and tender, usually in the first 6 to 8 weeks of its growth. You can eat the entire plant, leaves, stems, and even the flowers. Eat it raw in salads. It has a wonderful, slightly sour and salty crunch, almost like a watercress or a cucumber. Sauté it with garlic and olive oil, just like the people of Crete have done for centuries. It becomes soft and tender, much like spinach. You can add it to soups and stews, where it acts as a natural thickener because of its mucilaginous properties. You can even pickle it, which is a popular way to preserve it in the Middle East. In Mexico, they call it verdolagas and cook it with pork and green salsa. In India, it is known as kulfa and is used in curries. In China, where it has been cultivated continuously for thousands of years, they call it ma qi. Half the world never forgot its value. The other half was taught to poison it. I remember the first time I truly understood the value of this plant. I was visiting a small village in Crete, speaking with an elderly woman who had lived there her entire life. She was 93 years old, sharp as a tack, and she had never taken a single pharmaceutical drug in her life. When I asked her about her secret, she laughed and pointed to the ground. There it was, growing wild around her garden, the same plant her mother had fed her, and her grandmother before that. She called it glystrida, and she ate it almost every day. She had no idea about omega-3 fatty acids, or antioxidants, or any of the scientific terms we use. She just knew that this plant was good, and that it had always been good, and that her family had always eaten it. That is the wisdom we have lost. Have you ever eaten purslane? Perhaps you grew up with it, and your grandmother called it by another name. Perhaps you have been pulling it out of your garden for years, not knowing what you were throwing away. I would love to hear your stories and your recipes in the comments below. Let me know where you are from and what your family called this plant. And finally, let a few plants go to seed. A single purslane plant can produce up to 200,000 seeds. Each one of those tiny black seeds can remain dormant but viable in the soil for up to 40 years, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. This is the plant's ultimate survival strategy, and it can become yours as well. By letting it go to seed, you are ensuring that this gift of nature will be there for you, and for your children, and for your grandchildren, for decades to come. You are participating in an ancient cycle of abundance that no corporation can control. The herbicide industry does not want you to know that the richest source of omega-3 fatty acids on the planet is growing in your driveway. The pharmaceutical industry does not want you to know that the supplement they sell for $20 a bottle is a pale imitation of what this plant does for free. The agricultural industry does not want you to know that the super plant scientists are trying to engineer in a lab already exists, and it has been waiting patiently under our feet the entire time. It is called purslane, Portulaca oleracea. In India, they call it kulfa. In Mexico, verdolagas. In Greece, glystrida. Half the world never forgot its value. The other half was taught to poison it. But that can change. It can change in your own backyard, starting today. The knowledge was never truly lost. It was just buried. And now, it is time to let it grow.